What's up, hockey fans? Tyler Yaremchuk here to talk a little bit about the trade market in the NHL. Now, our guy Frank Seravalli over at dailyfaceoff.com dropped his latest trade targets, and as always, our insider had a ton of interesting names on his list, but there are a few that really stuck out to me that I wanted to dig into today. And the first guy I wanted to talk about simply is the guy at number one on the list, and that's Blue Jackets defenseman David Jiricek. He's 20 years old. He's just a couple years removed from being the 6th overall pick in the draft. He has a year left on his entry-level deal, but the Blue Jackets want to move him. This isn't the same regime that drafted him, with Don Waddell now in charge in Columbus, and this is something that's been going on now for basically a month. This has been a situation that's starting to drag on for a little bit, and while at first the Columbus Blue Jackets wanted a high-end young forward in return for Jiricek, there's now some talk that they might settle for a first-round pick and a depth defenseman. I think we will see closure on this Jiricek situation sooner rather than later. And two teams that I think would be great fits for Jiricek would be the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Minnesota Wild. For the Minnesota Wild, this is a chance to get a good young defenseman in your system. And how nice would it be if for the next decade, Brock Faber's on your top pairing, David Jiricek's on your second pairing? It could give them a long-term, really good top four, and they have enough veterans that, Jiricek wouldn't have to be rushed into the NHL right now. The other team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Listen, Kyle Dubas is trying to keep that Stanley Cup window pried open for the Penguins. If he's going to do that, he needs to start taking some swings on young players who can contribute for a while and who can be cheap. That's the only way they're going to try to turn this thing around with Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. As we move down Frank's list, there's one young forward who comes with a lot of team control, and he comes in at number 9. It's Josh Norris of the Ottawa Senators. Norris is only 25 years old. He signed a long-term extension with the Ottawa Senators and still has 5 more seasons remaining on that deal, with a cap hit of $7.95 million. A few years ago, back in the 21-22 season, Norris scored 35 goals in 66 games, but the last few years he's been banged up, he's had shoulder problems, and the production has fallen off because of that. The Sens are looking to make a big switch up because this season is not going according to plan for them once again. Norris is on the market, but what kind of team should be involved in him? Well, I could see some sort of a swap where maybe it's our problem for your problem. And one team that has a couple of young forwards in Frank's top 10 is the Philadelphia Flyers. Joel Farabee is a guy in a somewhat similar spot to Josh Norris. Similar age at 24, has had some very productive seasons in the NHL, but that production has fallen off a little bit. 3 more years at $5 million. The Flyers also have Morgan Frost all the way up at number 3 on Frank's list. Maybe this is a situation where Philly gets the centerman they're coveting, Ottawa gets a couple of good young forwards, one of which could help them with their scoring issue, and that could be a spot where it's just a my problem for your problem kind of a swap. Another name that would be interesting is Trevor Zegras, who comes in at number 10, the youngest of that group I just talked about at just 23, but similar to Josh Norris in the sense that, hey, he came into the league his first 2 full seasons, 61 points, 65 points. He was projecting and trajecting to be a star in this league. Over the last 2 seasons, he's been banged up, and in his last 52 games, he only has 25 points. And with all the other young pieces in Anaheim, there's a lot of people now wondering, is he really a fit long-term, or is this a team that's going to run with Cutter Gauthier and Mason McTavish and all of those players, Leo Carlson as well as their young core? If Zegras is on the market, I think there will be a few teams, maybe even a team like Montreal, who has a lot of U.S. national development players in their system. Columbus is in the same boat. I could see that being a couple of potential fits for Trevor Zegras. The last name I wanted to talk about was all the way down at number 20 on Frank's list, and that is Chris Kreider. There have been rumblings basically for the last 5-6 days that the Rangers and GM Chris Drury are willing to do something massive to shake up this roster, which is weird because their record this season has not been that bad, but the vibes are off in New York. There's some veteran players like Trouba and Kreider on the market. And here's where I come out on a guy like Chris Kreider, who is 33 years old, who has 2 more years on a deal with $6.5 million AAV. How do you get better by trading Chris Kreider? Because there's not a team out there who's going to give you a better, younger version of him or a faster, more effective version of him. So you're going to have to move him for futures, and then you're going to have to take those futures and try to flip them on the trade market for someone who can help you right now, because this isn't a rebuild or even a retool for the New York Rangers. They're in their Stanley Cup window, so I don't see a world in which they can move on from either one of Chris Kreider or Jacob Trouba, because their contracts are big. The Rangers are going to be a hard time looking at their fan base and saying, we're a better team after we traded these guys. And also, they both come with a decent amount of trade protection. They can't just be traded anywhere in the league. They have to submit lists to the New York Rangers. So I don't see the Rangers really as being a big player in the trade market right now, because I don't think they can create any sort of flexibility without making themselves significantly worse. And I don't see why they would want to make themselves significantly worse. Head over to dailyfaceoff.com. Take a look at the full list that our guy Frank has up. It is 20 names that are on the trade market right now, and it's a market that Frank says is really starting to heat up. Could we see a big trade before the roster freeze hits right before Christmas? And could there maybe be some big young names on the move? It is entirely possible. Check out Frank's full list and then leave me a comment down below. Let me know. Maybe you got a mock trade. Maybe you got one player that you think would be a great fit on another team. I want to hear from you, so hit me up in the comments. Today's video was brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important, and that's why Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service, because at Fountain Tire, they do both. Right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, up until December 14th, plus save an extra $50 on any service of $150 or more. Some restrictions apply. Stop in a Fountain Tire, make an appointment, or check out fountaintire.com, and make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on Daily Faceoff so you don't miss any of our videos.